Hello and welcome to another episode of CTRMRadio, a podcast from Commodity Technology Advisory, hosted on ctrmcenter.com, your place for everything CTRM. One of the trends in recent years in and around CTRM that we've observed has been open ecosystems of solutions in the cloud connected via open APIs. In fact, we see more and more vendors coming to market with point software as a service solutions that are designed to fit into the open ecosystem approach. But is this model applicable to everyone, both large, complex commodity traders and smaller, more boutique type firms? Is it catching on as an approach? And if so, why? Well, I invited 4 vendors that offer open solutions to tell us their opinions on these and other topics. I talked with Richard Williamson of Gen 10, Asbjorn Hansen of Previse Systems, Simon Piercy of CTRMCubed, and Marc Zabal of OpenCTRM. And what followed, I think you'll agree, was a very interesting conversation. Many thanks to them for participating. Many thanks to you for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Let's get started with the conversation.
Hi Gary, Simon Piercy. So I'm Managing Director at CTRMCubed.
Marc?
Hi, Marc Zabal. I'm the founder of OpenCTRM.
Richard?
Richard Williamson, CEO and founder of Gen 10.
Asbjorn?
Asbjorn Hansen, CEO of Previse Systems.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us on CTRMRadio today. And I want to talk about open ecosystems, and I've selected you as people that I know are in the world of open ecosystems one way or another. And I wanted to start off by asking you to describe what is an open ecosystem for CTRM. Why is it desirable? Let's start with Simon again.
Cool. Okay. So I think that CTRM is a very broad church, but I think what we're seeing is the split of application to broadly the established monoliths, so the big guys, and then emergent cloud service providers. So typically these will be organizations that have software as a service as their starting point. And will typically use things like standard REST-based APIs for their integration with other systems. And then really the ecosystem approach is to bring all those things together across multiple vendors. So in simple terms, that's how I see the ecosystem approach working in CTRM.
Marc, do you agree with that definition?
Yeah, I think it goes a little further. Been in this industry a long time, and I think what I'm seeing is more of a democratization of CTRM, and what I think that means is just kind of breaking down some of the barriers and being more open with other vendors and potential clients to build and add things into the ecosystem. So for instance, most of the players out there, it's very closed off. I mean, they're hoarding all the knowledge. They want to make all the customizations. And I think that premise is really, it's disruptive to the software itself, right? If you're trying to build everything to everyone in one software code base, you're going to get watered down versions of everything.
Yeah.
So this isn't a new novel concept. The concept is there. It's been done in software in many different industries. It's just about opening up, right?
Well, Richard, you've been at Gen 10, you've been trying to achieve this for some considerable time. In fact, you've been talking about it for at least, 6, 7 years. So do you agree with the gentleman, or do you have a different definition?
Yeah, no, I mean it's that. I mean, open. What does open mean to the customer? I mean, you need flexibility in the business, right? Even within a single asset class, you got geographical and jurisdictional concerns, differences, and so I mean, it's flexibility is what they need, and it's how do you provide that flexibility in a sensible and robust fashion. So there's a lot to discuss in terms of I mean, to have to have a backbone of where you're getting your main data points all together and nicely integrated in one package certainly has its benefits over microservices approach where everything is so decoupled and you've got all other it's not for free, and it's not you get to a state where perhaps the flexibility that you're trying to achieve can become less flexible because you've got APIs to update all of the time, making sure that this one is talking to that one. When that one has an update, how does that affect these other microservices? So, in terms of, is it desirable? They need to be open. But I guess the lessons that we've learned along the way is that it's good to have that core, that backbone infrastructure for your contracts, for your inventory, for your logistics, for your invoicing, but make that available to include peripheral point solutions for one particular geography, for example.
Exactly.
To make that available to different ERP systems. I mean, I would say, going a monolith, where I think it's been proved to fail in the industry, having a monolithic ERP system, try to do everything CTRM. If you try to build everything around that ERP system, my question is more about where does CTRM start and end, and where does the ERP system touch with it? That way that you get ultimate flexibility, switching out a better accounting system when it comes available. You're not just locked into a CTRM vendor who is trying to provide a general ledger, for example. But making sure that whatever backbone system you have is open to leverage container tracking, to leverage AI, to be able to switch out best of breeds point solutions. I think that is that's what I don't know whether it is desirable, but that's what to me makes real sense in terms of providing the flexibility to the customer.
Thanks. Asbjorn, I mean, isn't that what Previse Systems was founded to do as well?
Pretty much, yeah. It's the same sort of idea, right? That we always wanted to provide, a solution, but a solution is not us developing everything, right? It's about putting different pieces together so that you have a mainstream of data that's your core data set, right? And you have all these peripheral solutions that then extend what you're doing, going into different markets, different commodities, whatever it is, right? So that you can stream your data through and build from there, right? Essentially, it's around agility and time to market, right? From a customer's perspective, if I go into a new market, I want to be able to go do that, test that out with a relatively low spend, see whether it works or not. If it doesn't, I'll spin down that business again. If it does, I can invest more in it, but I can do it quickly, right? So the problem typically has been that it takes forever to get these things up and running, right? And if you have an ecosystem of vendors who all provide solutions that connect natively, then it's super quick to get things up and running. And then if that one thing doesn't work for you or you want something else, you unconnect that, connect something else, and off you go, right? Yeah. That gives you that flexibility, but under a certain degree of control, right? Back to what Richard's saying, right? The world where every little thing is its own little microservice is probably too granular and it's too hard to maintain over time, right? You get too much disruption that way, right? Whereas if you can build it in bigger pieces that then fit together, like Legos, right? Then it's much easier for you to do and for you to scale with the solution overall, right?
Yeah. Actually, I came across a credit vendor recently who told me that their entire go-to-market strategy was to be in your app store.
Yeah.
Yes. So clearly the model is attracting others, to the table. Yep. Anybody else, after listening to everybody, got anything else to say on the topic of, why it's desirable and that kind of thing?
I think there's also a transparency aspect to this whole thing where we're sharing knowledge and information with potential customers and third parties, right? I mean, if you go look for some of those monolithic systems for documentation or anything, it's just not there, right? So how are people going to learn how to integrate with these systems without actually buying those systems, which is really a difficult sell to any third party? Maybe you're someone who has a great idea for an analytics app or something that you want to use the data to create some insights. Like, you have to start from square one, from scratch to do that, which is just not the way software in general has moved. I mean, look at the Salesforces, the HubSpots of the world. Like, they're doing it. Why can't we do it? And the excuses are, they're dated. I don't believe it.
Well, one of the things I know that Richard always mentions to me is the lack of standards that the industry itself doesn't appear able to basically put together standards because it kind of views what it does as proprietary and strategic and competitive advantage. So maybe that's part of the problem.
It's
Is that
100%.
something that you guys see as pushback? Do you get pushback based around, we have a proprietary strategic approach and
I think standards can be, from an API basis, I think there are good standards out there for things like REST.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first stage that we can get to. And then I think above that, yes, you kind of need some sort of authoritative body that can define the next layer above that. But until somebody comes along and invents that, then I think at least, if nothing else, if we have kind of API and web standards, then we can move forward slightly. But I think it's a difficult one. I don't know, maybe Gary, it's something that you could do. I mean, you sit at the center of the industry, or something you could sponsor, or maybe get, we're talking about collaboration today, but
right.
Often that's the trickiest bit, is getting a broad consensus across the industry about how you do this stuff. And yeah, I think it's very difficult when the monolith vendors don't want to engage in that, and the emerging vendors are all kind of busy doing their own thing.
I've got this funny feeling that whoever you call the sort of monolith vendors have the same issues as everybody else, which is how do we migrate and create an agile business environment for our customers that are under all kinds of pressure to move into different markets and suddenly react to different changes in the market, etc. So I think, in the back of my mind is that we're either talking about a proprietary approach to building an ecosystem around a monolith, or we're talking about an open approach where we can basically have. So it's back to best of breed versus monolithic. It's just in a different era, isn't it?
Different label, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, it comes. There's that question of granularity, as just mentioned. How small do you make the Lego pieces?
Agreed.
Back to the standardization. I mean, there's the standardization on the technology front of how systems can talk to each other, and but then there's the standardization of how do you formulate a contract? How do you share that between systems?
What is a trade? Yeah.
How do you standardize 60,000 tons of soybeans versus 1 million barrels on a vessel?
Yeah.
Of oil, or a container load of coffee bags or bales of cotton. And I mean, I've been involved in several sort of industry initiatives to try to standardize in certain commodity sectors. And again, it's like you can wait a long time to try to get that done. Or you end up having to be pragmatic about it. So I mean, I fell back on trying to standardize the flexibility is sort of our tagline. That there are different. If you're building software, you need to have an understanding. You can be set in one area and provide a solution that is just for crude oil in one particular area, but your development team need to understand the business. They need to understand where the variables are, where the constants are, and build your architecture for change, whilst keeping, like I say, the backbone of some sort of structure, so that you can add on these additional services, but still have your data lake in a sensible state.
Brings us on to the next question, really. Is this approach something that's for the entire market, or is it for a specific segment of the market? Is it something that's really targeted at, say, smaller entities and mid-tier companies that have more of a standardized business model? Or is it something that a very large, complex commodity trading firm or whatever could also adopt? And let's start with Marc on this one.
So I think the whole idea is scalability, right? I want to be able to serve the smallest of the small and the large corporations. And if you've looked in the past, the dollars that were spent on these large corporations were all spent on implementation and customization of a software product. So all you have to do is redirect those dollars into building applications that interface with the open ecosystem, and you have the same net effect. So I don't see any reason why the small and large corporations can't use this type of scalable approach. I definitely don't think, oh, if you're a large corporation, you need a large monolithic system. It makes absolutely no sense. It's not nimble at all.
Asbjorn, I see you nodding your head there. What's your view?
Yeah, I mean, you're correct, right? We have customers both small and large, right? And we have some people going very, very long with apps and building a lot of stuff themselves. Others are, buying a few, right, and building others, and others are completely buying, right? It really depends on who you are as a company, right? What's your strategy? How do you want to deal with this, right? Some people you asked earlier, what's the pushback from customers on this sort of approach, right? And typically the pushback on my side is I don't want to deal with 5 different vendors, right? I just want to have one neck to choke and one process, right? So we came around that, right? So we have one way to do it and one way to deal with it, no matter who develops it in the background, right? So that's all about creating a solution for the customer. So the customer shouldn't really care who developed that piece of the solution you bought. You just need to make sure that it works, right? And so whether you're small or large, we see equal opposite appetite, right? We also see people starting out by buying an app and then later on deciding, no, I'm going to build this instead, because if you have a generic thing, it's going to be a bit slower than a more specific one, right? For integrations, for example. And if latency is my biggest problem, I might be able to do something faster myself. And the other way around, right? People who start building their own first and then later on say, nah, there's too much effort. I'm just going to buy it off the shelf one instead and then pay that fee instead, right? So it goes both ways, and it's a continuous change that drives it, right?
Right. Agreed. Simon, what's your view on that?
Yeah, I think it applies across the market. I mean, our main difference is that probably the bigger organizations probably already have bigger systems in place already. But that doesn't mean to say they can't sort of slowly untangle themselves from that. And I think, again, having an open ecosystem environment works pretty well with that. You can select a part of your kind of landscape that's given you a particular problem. You can put in a spot solution for that and then start to build around that. So I think that's the mechanism that the kind of emergent vendors are going to take with the bigger ones, bigger organizations. But I suppose as we look at the market now, the interesting thing is there's a huge number of smaller operators in the market. I mean, if you go back 20 years, there was a relatively small number of larger kind of utilities in the energy space and larger trading houses. That's all changed. It's all different now. There's a huge number of smaller merchant operators, and they're just looking for services that can be put in really quickly. So I think that they're more naturally attracted to that. But the bigger vendors, I mean, again, they're wanting to look at cloud across their enterprise. So yeah, I think that there's definitely an opportunity across that broad sector, but maybe the approach that the newer vendors are going to take is going to depend on the size of organization that they're looking at.
Richard, what about you? And perhaps just comment on another side of this, which is that often the vendors that are in the open ecosystem sphere are usually relatively newer and therefore smaller. Is that an issue that you guys face as well?
I mean, I think if you're looking at some of the tier one companies, to go in with a replacement fully fledged CTRM would perhaps be a tall ask. And so the approach there as well. Okay, so you're stuck in your on-premise type thing, but you want to start moving certain functionality out to the cloud. Take our contract management module. You know, has its API to integrate with they will have some other backbone system that it needs to talk to. But in terms of getting those contracts digitally approved, having those templates, making it, being able to issue a contract in under a minute and have a digital approval process, digital signatures, is something that they may not be able to have with on-premise solutions. And so you can still help those, it's a calling card, or is it a door wedge? Hopefully it's a door wedge where we can start off with that and then start bringing in, well, how about your logistics module, inventory, etc. So that's just the way it is. Although there are some large companies where they are just tired, and they know that they need to move to the cloud. So it's less about open, more there's that bigger thing about being in the cloud and being able to leverage other technologies out there quickly, right? Being able to add peripheral applications, being able to integrate with the with the bank's initiatives around letters of credit or whatever the case might be. But in the same tone, for a larger company, they already have an ecosystem. It's just at a higher level. CTRM is just a part of it, and that's why they have multiple ones, because they're in multiple jurisdictions, etc., etc. But whereas the smaller company, just give me a system that I can use in 3 or 4 weeks with some training, because I need to execute these contracts and I need to know what my open P&L is, right? I need it to interface with my accounting system. That's what they need, and any sort of, they're not at that. What else can we do to bring peripheral things in and integrate with this, integrate with that? They just need something to either take them off spreadsheets or to help them scale from small to a mid-tier company. But you want to have that technology, that is that architecture that is built in order to be able to integrate with whatever new system, new point solution out there becomes available, rather than getting something that's very closed. A cloud system, which is really an on-premise thing that is hosted on data centers, is not going to get you that cloud, nimble, flexible solution. Yeah.
And does that provoke any reaction from any of you? Any additional?
Yeah, as you saw, right? The classical thing, right? At the end of the day, scalability and then the serverless architecture and those sort of things is a different thing than just taking what you have and hosting it and calling it cloud, right? It's not the same thing at all, right? And the ability to change services within your architecture, right? As technology evolves all the time, right? Every year you change things in the core of your product. You use different services, you upgrade different things, you keep changing it, right? Because technology changes. And that is one of the benefits for the cloud, for us at least, right? That you can keep doing that and you keep switching things in and out. Customers don't even know that you switch technology on some fronts, but you went to something that's better and faster, right? Or can provide something else that we couldn't do before. And that continues to change with the full cloud solution, right? That's not going to happen on premise.
Yeah, I think you're right saying things like digital signatures and like all these tools are out there, and there's so many different interesting tools, not CTRM necessarily, but technical tools, Zapier, all these things. If you don't have an open ecosystem or an open architecture or a cloud-based system, you can't leverage any of those. And it is a bit scary to hear large vendors say we only want to deal with one solution provider to do all this. It's such an old, antiquated mentality. Like, that's not the way the world is moving, so I don't see a reason why they shouldn't get on board. But obviously there's always hurdles, but I think there's a lot out there that's missed, and innovation has been very much stifled in our space.
It's interesting looking at it from our perspective, because we obviously see the entire universe, or most of it. And just recently, in the last year, 18 months, I've noticed that in fact there are an awful lot of software as a service entities coming to market with various point solutions that would qualify as being somewhere in the commodity trading slash logistics space. So from my perspective, I think we do see the momentum, but it's not as fast as you might expect. And probably that is down to the fact that, let's face it, I've been in this business since 1997 and not much has really changed. And I think that's because of the sheer complexity. Yeah. It's a lot of complexity. So having said that, let's ask each of you how the market's actually reacted to your offering. And since you're there on my screen, Marc, let's start with you. How has the market reacted to what you offer?
So, we really only came to market about 3 months ago, so we're still a bit early on in our journey. Obviously I've done this for a long time, but the reviews have been mixed. I think some of the models that we're talking about in terms of pricing have been a little mixed. We're trying to look at some scalable models, some usage-based models, and it's mixed. I think the smaller ones are, yes, that's what we want, and then the larger ones are, no, that's not what we want, which is pretty obvious. But in terms of the openness and capability, I think it's been pretty good. I think folks all see that, yeah, this is a newer system with a newer, more open model, and they like it. But it's a slow business. We all know how long these sales cycles are. Yeah. But I think generally it's been good. But again, 3 months, not a real long sample.
Asbjorn, you guys have been quite visibly doing well, it seems, in the marketplace. So how has the response been to Previse?
Pretty good, right? So I think at the moment we have 76 apps in our app store. And if you look at the total number of apps we've sold, we're at 163 or something like that as of this morning, right? So clearly it works, right? We have multiple different vendors providing these things into the App Store on a weekly basis, right? As new things come up and people have new ideas and so on and so forth, right? So you end up having these other vendors who essentially like, hey, if we can put it in here, we can use that as marketing effort, right? We help sell it to our customers, right? Then that's good for everybody, right? And customers get that flexibility that they need, right? The agility to go and say, hey, oh, there's something interesting here. Let me go try that. It doesn't work, uninstall it again, move on, right? But the whole idea is to get closer to what we used to on our phones, right? Why would it be so difficult, right? So, yeah.
And in your App Store model, your customers can actually build like custom pieces and then
they can build all stuff themselves. Exactly. They have an SDK where they can go build everything. So everything's documented. They can go build all kind of stuff, right? And we have some doing that a lot, and we live too much sometimes. But yeah, that's the whole idea, right? You can build your own screens, you build your own stuff, host it into Docker and publish into your application, right? Or you can go buy it off the shelf, right? Depends on what you want. It's about that, provide that flexibility we talked about it all along, right?
Yeah, as I say, I was really quite surprised when I was told that our entire go-to-market strategy is to use Previse Systems App Store to reach their market. I thought, wow, that's kind of intriguing. Mm-hmm. Richard, what about Gen 10?
There is a point to not wanting, depending on the size of the client, not wanting to have the job of coordinating multiple vendors to bring everything together for their solutions. I mean, the idea is to put less tax on whatever IT staff and technology spend they have inside the company and go to that software as a service model. I mean, we position ourselves more as a technology partner than a vendor. Well, we kind of do that for them. As we need to integrate with some container tracking service. Now, there are several container tracking services out there. So they talk to the one vendor, which is us, and we help coordinate. We will bring ideas to the table. They might bring ideas to the table, and it's about how quickly can you interface with these different solutions. So it's sort of, I don't know whether it's hybrid, but we know quite a lot about what we're doing, what's realistic, what's a little bit pie in the sky, or how do we pragmatically get from something very conservative to trying things out. when you're providing more service than just access to a CTRM system, I think that's valuable and that's being very well received amongst our client base. Yeah.
I know, Richard, that one of your visions has always been to sort of connect the parties involved in the supply chain. And I guess that this technology and this way forward gives you that ability, right? So that's something that probably you're pleased about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we started out 25 years ago, albeit just in the cotton sphere, that we saw the job of how do we share data, not just downstream from the farm to the mill. There's multiple stakeholders involved, and they're all dealing with the same core data. But the marine insurance company has one lens, the trade finance or the bank has another lens, the inspection service company, and it's like you're all sharing the same inventory type stuff, and you're adding to it. You're all sharing certain contract or shipping, let's say, rules of the game, the shipping instruction. So yeah, there's still hope. We haven't become staid old farts just yet. And when you have things like, I mean, this isn't an AI topic, but that also helps us not have to wait for industries to standardize their practices. We can incorporate. I mean, we're on AWS technology. We can very easily, at a very good cost point, integrate AI functionality to, for example, cleanse quality analysis certificates that come in all sorts of various formats, PDFs, spreadsheets, CSVs, or whatever, across different sorts of commodities. And go back maybe 15 years even, trying to standardize what a certain analysis should look like coming from these laboratories seemed to be a good industry standard goal to go for. And it's not too big. It doesn't have to standardize the whole industry, just for getting that information shared amongst parties. So again, 15 years later, they still haven't standardized these things, but AI has given us the ability to extract, cleanse, and standardize internally, and then provide clean formats for our clients to then pass on to their clients. So I really like it that we don't have to wait for standardization, that these new technologies can help address it in a pragmatic fashion. Yeah.
Sounds good. Simon, probably what, second or third time around the block. How does it compare?
Well, I think in terms of the market reaction, I think the market is always going to react positively to more options within the market than less. I think one of the takeaways that I would say from our clients is, if you talk about ETRM and CTRM and go back a dozen years or so, then those letters would like horrify a lot of people, because they're thinking time, cost, will it ever work? There was a long litany of failed implementations that have happened over the years, which was quite rightly enough to scare people half to death. An interesting thing from our customer feedback is that we've moved from kind of like years and months to implement a product down to kind of like minutes and hours. That's been a step change because of some of the innovations that we've done using the sort of newer technology. And that's a big startup, because what would have these organizations done if they didn't have that option? Well, they would have probably spent the first 2 or 3 years putting in spreadsheets and then building up a whole kind of technical debt around that spreadsheet, and then they'd have to think how to move off it. So, we get a lot of good feedback that, we can just get them on board kind of really quick, offering a simpler, lower cost alternative to start with. And then hopefully as they grow, then our model grows. We do a proper software as a service model. So effectively you're paying, per user license, if you like, and then just get people off and running and started. We have an app store as well. Our app store is probably a little bit different to Asbjorn's in as far as ours is effectively a vendor app store. So it's not point solutions. It's specific vendors that we have an established integration with, so that works quite well. But again, just coming back to the kind of open standards, in a similar sort of way as a great fallback position for our clients is that we have a documented API. It's all listed out there in Swagger. If they want to go and do something that is not in the product, it's a little bit off base or something that we haven't done, they know that they can just grab the stuff from the API, manipulate it around in their own little homespun bit of software, and then be able to put transactional data back into the system. And that's just a great out for people for, just covering off that the invariable small percentage of requirements that, is just not served by a standard system because it's bespoke to them. So, yeah, I mean, it's the way things are going, and we've got very good reception from the market.
Great. Well, I'll just quickly open it up to any final comments from anybody, because obviously you've sat and listened to each other, and I know sometimes that triggers an additional thought. So if anybody has one.
Well, I think to build on what Simon just said, right, in terms of, how people use these solutions, right? I think if you look back, right, traders were people who sit there and did trades, and that was kind of it, right? If you look at them now, there are more and more people who have Python skills and have, the ability to build stuff around APIs, streaming events, looking at data, and crunching big numbers, right? Using technologies to trade is becoming more and more of the thing, right? And as you're driving to that model, you clearly see the need for solutions who can support that, right? And who can follow that way of trading, right? I think that's the drive for this stuff as well, right? And I think that's exactly right. That's again the agility and the ability to utilize technology to do new things and be quicker and faster to market than your competitors, right? And once in a while, you do the odd, weird thing that you probably will never do again. You don't need to have a standard solution to do all that. You need a way to handle that one trade and still have your position and your exposure and everything in one place, right? That's what it is, right? That's what these solutions offer, I believe.
Anybody else?
I think there's also, we want to expand the market. We want to add more participants. I think there's a lot of folks out there who do these things. They either do it on spreadsheets or they do it by some other means still. And I'm not just talking about small, underserved, players. There are some large corporations who are still doing it in spreadsheets, and they're just kind of happy with their misery. So it's how do you get to them and say, look, there's an easier way. It's not going to break the bank. You start small and you'll see the benefits and grow from there. It's not that they don't have the money. I just don't think they have the will. So it's like, how do you expand the market to more participants to do more interesting things, communicating? I mean, to this day, most banks don't have APIs for their trades, right? To this day. I mean, it's crazy. So there's got to be a way to do that and demand that type of upgrade in technology. And to do that, you need a community, you need more participants. That's pretty much as simple as it is.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time. Much appreciate it. It's been a very interesting discussion, and I wish you all lots of luck.